So I think that that's a big part of this discussion is what is there to give where, who picks up the tab, right? So let's talk about that in who picks up the tab and just like kind of slice and dice this and understand. And let's not call out one fear. There's a stack of things, right?
Yeah.
I think about price changes is like you don't change price every time a cost goes up. You eat costs sometimes, but you reevaluate pricing constantly. And when things stack up and there's a stack of changes, if your packaging cost goes up and your hardware cost goes up and a fee in the systems you use goes up, you're going to reevaluate pricing. And then the
Yeah,
supply chain is going to react.
reevaluate systems in that same sense.
Yep.
Like I think what
Right.
we really, when I look at this, you kind of have like what I've kind of called like low price conditioning. And this is the core, I think one of the core issues in a lot of like more mature markets that have been around for 5, 6+ years is that ultimately supply has overtaken demand, right? In a lot of those markets. And what that's happened, right, is we've started to condition the retail purchaser about low pricing, right? Low price
Hmm.
conditioning on this. So I'm not going to pay more for the same product next week than I paid for it this week, right? Like
Right.
I'm not going to pallet that. It's not something I'm going to do. I'm just going to go and change to a different brand or change the way I purchase, right? To make sure I'm holding my price because ultimately the consumer's conditioned as well, right? Consumers, we have this thing around loyalty and loyalty. Are they loyal? Are they not? They price shopping, right? So the moment the consumer is coming and they're shopping at your store, but now it's a little bit more expensive, where are they conditioned, right? They might just go look somewhere else. They don't want to hit
Hmm.
their pocketbook. Their costs as a consumer with everything else, it's not like milk and eggs are cheaper, right? Their costs are
Right.
more. So they're not necessarily wanting to shoulder that either. Alternatively, I think the thing that we have to also remember is not only have we conditioned low pricing through the cannabis supply chain, you also have this threat of hemp, right? And so we got to remember there's intoxicating hemp out there that's readily available. There's not as much tax burden on these businesses. They might be able to sell it at a lower unit rate at that, top 10 liquors or wherever the heck it is, right? But there's
Yep.
also the threat of hemp as well on pricing. And so I think there's just ultimately in the supply chain as what we look at today, and this might not be as prevalent in like a brand new market, right? Where demand is still outpacing
Yeah. Where it
supply
sells
at a
itself.
point.
The only place it ever sells itself
Yeah,
that first
exactly
year.
right. But everywhere else, right? By year three, supplies caught up, prices fall up to 50% within 18 to 24 months. Once you start to see that, it's a drastic drop, and people's costs as an
Yeah.
operator are not changing, right? If anything,
Yeah.
every year they're going up slightly. And now with this, so this is, I think, ultimately where we think about this bigger, broader issue of where's there room for
Hmm.
additional fees in today's market, especially in legacy markets, right? Where they're already razor thin margins. They're thinking about survival, right? And you're thinking about, okay, what adjustments do I have to do to my business? Staffing, systems, packaging, overhead, regular costs of things that I'm running my business. How do I lower those to try and remain in existence, right? And so when you get hit
Yep.
with these things at a time when you're already really stressed and you're already feeling overwhelmed, you're not really sure about that. It it doesn't feel right, right? And I think that's where some of that reaction has been pretty swift the last couple of weeks, and a lot of some of the legacy markets and new ones too around how do I absorb this? And really, it's the worst time for my business to be hit with this, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of, and I think a lot of it ultimately market conditions and the conditioning of pricing.